Welcome to Space Coast, to this special election night program featuring the latest in Brevard County election results. I'm Matt Reed, Public Affairs Editor at Florida Today and host of the Matt Reed Show here on WEFS. Whether you're watching on your phone, your TV, your laptop computer, we want to thank you for making us one of the screens you're using tonight to track this amazing election. We'll dive into the results in just a minute. But first, I'd like to introduce one of the experts who will be here helping us make sense of the results tonight. Professor Chris Muro is a political scientist at Eastern Florida State College. Chris, great to be with you again here tonight.
Matt, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Good to see you again.
Now, political consultant and attorney Kendall Moore will also be here with us later in the program. He is out politically consulting right now, and we hope to catch up with him soon. Chris, we have, I believe, half of the ballots in already from early voting and absentee ballots. We're going to take a look now at the first look at the results from Brevard County. I should note to our viewers, however, that the state is not releasing any election results, which could affect what we know about the congressional race here until 8 o'clock. Okay, so you've first seen the county commission race results there. And in South Brevard, you had John Tobiah leading Randy Foster. Also, you have Christina Znardi clobbering a sham write-in candidate. This was an interesting one to watch. Scott Ellis and Dave Netterstrom in the clerk of courts race. In a tight or a hard school board race, Tina Deskovich is leading Darcy Addo. Matt Susan is trailing Karen Henderson in the district that includes Rockledge, Vieira, and Suntree area. Kelly McCormick Ingrid appears to be leading Rod Kernan for judge. And in Cocoa Beach, in the mayor's race, you have Ben Malik out in front. Cocoa Beach, seat 2, Ed Martinez is in the lead. Cocoa Beach, seat 3. Boy, that's a close race. Now, in Cocoa, for mayor, you've got Henry Parrish leading Dontavius Tay Smith, who takes my award for best campaign website this year. And in the city of Melbourne, there is a really tough three-way race for mayor, but it looks like Kathy Meehan is in the lead so far. And there's a tight one in the city council race there in Melbourne. And C.J. Johnson and Paul Alfrey look to be having a tight one there in District 5 in Melbourne as well. Wow, in the city of Palm Bay, in a mayor's race, William Capote, the current mayor, is beating former mayor John Mazziotti. Harry Santiago is leading Daniel Waldesouza. There's another city council race in Palm Bay, another tight one. We'll see how that unfolds. In Titusville, for mayor, Walt Johnson appears to be beating Robert Jordan. In the city council race in Titusville, you've got Sarah Steckel in the lead. In West Melbourne, this is the top 3 finishers. I'm not going to call this one yet. That one's wide open, and so is this one. In the Barefoot Bay Recreation District, where the top 3 vote getters will win the office. This is the vote to, this is Brevard County results for retaining the judges. I'm just going to let these roll through here. Those seem to be unfolding the way they always do, which is about 1/3 of everybody says no in retaining the judges, and 2/3 say yes. Now, for the District Court of Appeal, it seems to be pretty much the same pattern. It's a retention vote. I told you we were going to give you all the races here, and we are going right through that District Court of Appeal, and you can see how these things are going. Judge Torpy, actually from Brevard County, he seems to be a sure thing to get back onto the bench. Now, in Cape Canaveral, this is an interesting race. 2 longtime people coming back to challenge 2 incumbents, the top 2 vote getters. That's going to be a close one in Indy Atlantic, and I think, looks like in Malabar. Yep, 49% to 51%. Again, about half the votes in Brevard County thus far from early voting and absentees. Town of Melbourne Beach, top 3 vote getters there. This one's going to be tough to call tonight. City Council in Rockledge, seat 2. Sean Ferguson seems to have the lead there. And in my town of Satellite Beach, Mayor Frank Catino appears to be leading for re-election there. This is the top 2 vote getters for Satellite Beach City Council. And Mark Breimer appears to be one of the top vote getters there. Montecito Community Development District, seat 2. And there's the results in the Vieira District seats. Now, folks are going to want to not only listen to what I am saying and watching those main graphics, but watch the other graphics that are going to be up continuously tonight, because there are going to be even more races, issues, including the lagoon tax we might not mention in one of our pass-throughs on these results. Chris, what are the hot spots for you tonight? What are you watching?
Well, I tell you, that county commission race, District 3, was interesting. John Tobiah, Randy Foster. Looks like the race is pretty tight there. I know there was the Florida Today's endorsement, a little unorthodox for Brevard County, and John Tobiah taking a little heat from the Business Voice PAC. And so that really became an interesting race, hard-fought race, and it looks like the results, this is going to be a tight one. But John Tobiah is used to that. Most of his elections have been very close.
Yeah, he's an interesting candidate in that he runs as just an unapologetic conservative, campaigns very hard, and so far has won as a conservative in areas that aren't necessarily majority conservative voters at all. It's a fairly diverse district down there. Where do you think that some fresh faces in councils or other places might make a real difference?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say now at this point, but it looks like most of the folks we're seeing here in these races are people that are going to be return incumbents that are winning. That Palm Bay mayoral race was pretty interesting, a rematch from 2012 between John Mazziotti and William Capote. Now, after one term, we see this rematch, and it looks like William Capote is at 60% of the vote already. That's a big mountain for John Mazziotti to climb to get back here, and it made sense to me. I think William Capote's been very effective. He's been a grassroots sort of mayor. He's got a good infrastructure there in Palm Bay, so I think we're going to continue on the same path with his leadership. I did want to mention, though, Matt, this is the 40th year of doing merit retention elections for judges.
Have you ever seen anybody lose?
We have not in the state of Florida. There has never been a judge who has been thrown out in a merit retention election. That's 40 straight years of a perfect record. And like you pointed out, almost every single one of them will receive between 65 and 67% of an affirmative vote, which is, to me, it's stunning to have that sort of a 40-year perfect track record.
Well, I don't think people are necessarily going, well, this guy, I'm going to get you. People either vote yes to retain or they vote heck no. Somebody's got to vote no, and it works out to be 2/3, 1/3 just about every time. Those local judge races, we're showing those up in our graphics as we go on tonight. You know, they get knocked for not having much to say as candidates, but it seems like every year as it gets closer to election night, those races can get pretty nasty. There was some mudslinging in those judicial races, and I will be fascinated to see how they turn out for us here tonight.
It's true. It's unfortunate, in my view anyway, is the judicial elections for circuit and county court judges. Fact is, the voter, the reason they can't say much is because, well, they're prohibited by law and judicial canon of ethics from soliciting funds and from campaigning as a partisan. So the voter really doesn't have a lot of information. A lot of the mailers that I received on these races, a lot of it was gutter type politics, not really issue oriented or issue based. And I think that's a lamentable fact, Matt.
Well, we're going to look at the results again here in just a minute and go through some new latest numbers. I'm struck by how many mayoral races are up tonight that are going to be interesting to watch, that really have some referendums on how their cities are being run.
Sure.
I think that's really interesting. And then, of course, county commission, school board, big races could shape majorities on those two panels for years to come. And we'll see how those turn out. All right, let's take a look at some more results here. Again, I want to note to viewers that we will not have state results in until 8 o'clock. Tallahassee is not releasing those until the panhandle votes. But there's a look at how the county commission races are doing now. Again, not a blowout by John Tobiah and Randy Foster in that diverse district we talked about, but he is leading. But Christina Znardi, who won in a primary race, is beating a write-in candidate as she was expected to do. Scott Ellis and Dave Netterstrom was one that anybody could have guessed, but Scott Ellis being a very strong campaigner. Tina Deskovich and Darcy Addo for school board in the area that includes the far south beaches, or actually all the south beaches from the Pineda down in Palm Bay. There's one of those judge races that we were talking about that's hard fought, but Kelly McCormick Ingram seems to be leading in that race. In Cocoa Beach, Ben Malik, pretty good candidate, running as Cocoa Beach mayor, getting 59% of the race vote there so far. Cocoa Beach seat 2, Ed Martinez has the lead. Cocoa Beach seat 3, it looks like, boy, this is a close one between Mike Gautreaux and Carolyn. Well, there we go. In the Cocoa mayor's race, I wish we could have spent more time with these candidates because they're both interesting people. For the mayor's race in Melbourne, Kathy Meehan has the lead there. Yvonne Minus has an early lead over Dan Porsey for City Council District 3. City Council District 5, looks like Paul Alfrey is leading C.J. Johnson. And there's William Capote leading former Mayor John Mazziotti. Now, Capote barely beat Mazziotti the first time in that race. This is kind of interesting to see. Harry Santiago Jr. with a lead in the City Council seat 2 in Palm Bay. Ooh, that's a tight one for the other City Council seat in Palm Bay. Titusville Mayor Walt Johnson beating former school board chairman Robert Jordan for the mayor's seat there. Sarah Steckel with a lead in the Titusville City Council seat 2. Here's another wide open one, 3 seats up for grabs in West Melbourne. Top 3 vote getters will be elected there. Same with Barefoot Bay Recreation District. Now that might seem like a big deal, but it sure is to the folks who live in Barefoot Bay. It's their body. And here we go through those court retention votes again, Chris, with Judge LaBarga, who's been on a mission to improve access to the courts for the poor. Now we're going through the District Court of Appeals. It looks like these judges are destined for retention. Not a surprise there. Again, usually about 1/3 of voters voting to throw the bums out, and 2/3 saying, I think they're probably okay. Now in Cape Canaveral, this is an interesting race. You have a former mayor, former longtime city councilman coming back, running against 2 incumbents in John Bond and Mike Brown. And it looks like Mike Brown and the Rocky Randalls are leading in that race there. Now there's Vinnie Taranto, who I've met, a political newcomer. Now we go to Malabar, where we're seeing a couple of close races there. Moving to Rockledge, where Sean Ferguson has a lead over Carol Laments. And in Satellite Beach, Frank Catino with a 2-1 lead over Cheryl Deenan at this point in balloting. Now there's 2 city council people up for election in Satellite Beach. I think you can see who's leading there. And in the Montecito Community Development District, which is that area that is the old base housing in Satellite Beach, they're electing somebody to look out after the interest, as is Vieira East Community Development District with Joe Walsh in the lead there. All right. Chris, let's talk about some voting trends here. Everybody's talking about Trump and Clinton, Clinton and Trump. Latest polls show that there is no drop-off in enthusiasm or passion for voting in either one of these races in Florida, which begs the question, how might those races have affected others down the ballot, whether it was U.S. Senate, Congress, state legislature, shoot, even Palm Bay City Council?
Sure. Well, about 12 or 13 days ago, Matt, there were a lot of articles being written about the negative effect that Trump was going to have on down ballot races, and that members of Congress and senators and state legislators and governors even were all trying to move away from the Trump label, as Republicans were worried that it was going to have a negative effect. Now here we are 12, 13 days later, and quite the opposite seems to be happening, at least at the Senate level. We expect Marco Rubio to be returned to the Senate here in Florida, and for Republicans to keep control of the Senate with perhaps a 51-seat majority. In Congress, they have 247 members now. Most analysts see them returning in the new year with probably 235 seats, so still a sizable majority in Congress. Republicans control 69 of 99 legislative chambers in the United States, almost unprecedented power there. And what we're seeing now is they're probably going to keep most of those seats in our state legislative assemblies. So the negative down ballot effect that Trump was supposed to have doesn't seem to have materialized.
No, in fact, it looks like if John Tobias, for example, holds on to his lead in the county commission, and if many of the Republican incumbents win their legislative seats,
sure.
Well, there's some redistricting. So,
District
people
1
who have
county commission as well, moving
correct
Republican.
It could be a Republican sweep tonight. It sort of raises the question of, did redistricting make things more competitive after all? What do you think?
Well, there probably will be 1 or 2 seats across the state that move from Republican to Democratic control here in Florida, maybe bringing a little more balance to the congressional delegation, but Republicans will continue to have a majority in Florida's congressional delegation. So I don't think it was the game changer that many people thought it would be, the court-imposed redistricting.
Interesting. All right, well, I am told that we have 106 precincts of the 107 reporting thus far. Oh, I'm sorry, 170 precincts. So we still have quite a few ballot boxes.
Right.
I guess they're not boxes anymore. They're computers to download and get those results in from
Matt, you had
across the
mentioned
county.
already that, and the figures I saw on the Supervisor of Elections website, we're talking almost 60% of registered voters cast their ballots early. 60%,
Wow.
close to 60%. That is a stunning figure. We're expecting close to 85% turnout of registered voters here in Brevard County this evening.
It's amazing. I think it's probably something to be proud of, actually. I've heard many, many predictions about the demise of democracy, depending on who wins the presidential race, but I think that the opposite is probably the case here. All right, let's go ahead and turn to some more election results. I mentioned that 106 precincts are in now of 170. Let's see where things stand. As you mentioned, Chris, in County Commission District 1, Rita Pritchett, a Republican, appears to have a pretty comfortable lead there. I expected this one in South Brevard to be a little bit tighter, but John Tobias, a state representative running for County Commission, is in the lead there. And in Southwest Brevard, for County Commission, Christina Zanardi is a shoo-in to win there. Now, Clerk of Courts, incumbent Scott Ellis, is leading comfortably in that race, as is Tina Deskovich in the District 3 school board race against Darcy Addo. Across the county, in the Vieira, Suntree, Melbourne, Rockledge area, Karen Henderson has a narrow lead over Matt Susan. For County Court Judge Group 2, Kelly McCormick Ingram is in the lead in that race. In Cocoa Beach, for the mayor's race, Ben Malik has a pretty comfortable lead over Adriana Dillard. Pardon my tongue-tied there. Ed Martinez is in the lead in the Cocoa Beach City Council race, District 2 there. All right, there are the results for the other Cocoa Beach City Council seat. Moving over to Cocoa, looks like incumbent Henry Parrish is leading Tay Smith. Let's go down to Melbourne now, where for the mayor's race, we see that Kathy Meehan is beating off 2 other opponents, and we have a much closer race, actually, in some of the city council races there. All right, moving to Palm Bay, there's that mayor's race with John Mazziotti trailing William Capote, the incumbent, 41% to 59%. Now here's a look at the city council races in Palm Bay. That is a close one for the seat 3. Up in Titusville now, Walt Johnson appears to be beating Robert Jordan for the mayor's race and also for city council. Sarah Steckel appears to be comfortably in the lead. West Melbourne, the top 3 vote getters win there. Pat Bentley appears to be the top vote getter so far. Wow, that's a close race. And also in Cape Canaveral City Council, the top 2 vote getters take office there. Mary Jo Kilcullen leading for the town of Indialantic seat. Malabar Town Council, District 2, Laura Mahoney is in the lead. Steve Rivet is in the lead for Malabar Town Council, District 3. Now to Melbourne Beach, the top 3 vote getters will take office there, but that's another close race, too close to call. Sean Ferguson is comfortably in the lead in Rockledge for City Council, and Frank Catino is comfortably in the lead for Mayor of Satellite Beach. There's a look at the City Council results so far in Satellite Beach. And then there is the Montecito Community Development District and the Vieira Community Development Districts. We're not overlooking those. And again, I want to remind our viewers that if they are watching this, to keep their eye on the right side where we have graphics of even more races, issues, including the lagoon tax. Later we'll have some state issues, on down to city issues on the ballot. We've got more than we can possibly say out loud here and not do anything else.
There's a lot going on. And Matt, you talked about the demise of democracy being premature. I think also maybe the demise of the power of incumbency may be premature. A lot of the incumbents being reelected or returning to office in strong numbers. And so I think that's always been something very powerful, being an incumbent elected official. And also, I think we're looking at the school board races. Tina Descovich there has run as a conservative. I think she's going to move the school board perhaps a little bit to the right, if you will. And that Karen Henderson, Matt Susan race, that is definitely a close race. And I think Matt Susan's been running a very good campaign, strong campaign, but Karen Henderson seems to have the edge right now.
She is the incumbent there, and she's got good name recognition.
Sure she does.
She hasn't done a bad job on the school board, but Matt Susan has brought some energy to this race and is making things very, very interesting. One of the things I'm curious to know about is what you make of how the city or the county commission may shape up in terms of its politics, its outlook, and the majority that we might see moving forward, given some of the results that we're seeing here tonight. Now, granted, there's still plenty of votes to be counted, but...
Well, this is going to be a completely Republican-dominated county commission. Andy Anderson leaving in seat 5, Christy Asnardi is taking over, John Tobiah coming into seat 3, Rita Pritchett in District 1. This county commission is definitely going to be moving at a much more conservative direction than it has been over the past 10 or 20 years. So I think this is definitely a new level of conservatism we're going to see at the county commission level.
Well, I would say that if that conservatism is translating to the vote on the lagoon tax, which we will be showing people as things go here, we might wind up with a county commission that opposed the lagoon tax, at least a lot of these new people that are running, and they're going to get the situation that they wanted. So we'll have to see whether or not they can make progress on some of the priorities with that.
Right. Well, you remember Amendment 1 from the 2014 election on the environment. It was passed with 70-some-odd% of the vote, and of course, implementation's another thing. Passing an amendment is one thing, implementing it the way that the people who wrote it and supported it is another. So, therein lies the rub. In
Brevard County, trust is always the biggest issue when it comes to these tax referendums. Sure. When the school board won a tax for facilities for schools 2 years ago, right? It was a big deal.
Huge deal.
But they campaigned and worked for months to try to make sure that they were instilling trust in the oversight and those kinds of things.
Accountability, right.
And I'm not sure we've seen exactly the same thing from the people backing the lagoon tax in this case, to be honest. All right, let's take another look at the election results as they're coming in. I think we've got a few more precincts to report on. Okay, we've got 141 of the 170 precincts reporting, and it looks like Rita Pritchett still has a lead in County Commission District 1, which is Titusville, Mims, Port St. John, North Brevard. And John Tobiah is still in the lead in the southeastern Brevard County area. Christine Asnardi was expected to be she was going to roll tonight, running against an unknown write-in candidate, and Scott Ellis, handily so far leading Dave Netterstrom for clerk of courts. Here's the school board races. Tina Deskovich was leading, almost won the primary outright. Right. In this case, we've got a pretty close race between Matt Susan and Karen Henderson, and we'll just have to see what kind of precincts are yet to be reported in that race. Kelly McCormick Ingram appears to be beating Rod Kernan for judge. And let's go to Cocoa Beach now, where Ben Malik is in the lead for mayor. Cocoa Beach Council seat 2. Ed Martinez is in the lead. We've got a close race between Carolyn Woolis and Mike Gautreau. Those are two difficult names to pronounce in District 3 there. Now let's go over to Cocoa, where Henry Parrish is leading Dontavius Tay Smith, 74% to 20-something%. Boy, that three-way Melbourne mayor race is sure a slugfest, but Kathy Meehan appears to be winning that one so far. And another close race for Melbourne City Council, District 3, and again, in a little less close, but still a competitive one for County Council or City Council District 5 in Melbourne. Moving a little farther south to Palm Bay, where the mayor's race seems to have William Capote, the incumbent, in the lead. Incumbent Councilman Harry Santiago seems destined for re-election there. Palm Bay City Council seat 3, a little bit tighter race there. We'll see how this one turns out tonight. Let's go to Titusville, where for mayor, Walt Johnson is beating Robert Jordan so far. Titusville City Council, Sarah Steckel is beating Sean Williams for seat 2. West Melbourne, wide open race. Top 3 vote getters will take office. We'll see how that one turns out tonight. Cape Canaveral's got some interesting things going on with some longtime political figures coming back to challenge 2 incumbents, and one of them seems likely to, or potentially to pull this one off. Indialantic, an interesting race there, as is the Melbourne or Malabar Town Council races, where we've got a couple of close ones unfolding. Now, in the town of Melbourne Beach, those results looked a little bit funny to me. We'll come back and get you straightened out on that one. Rockledge City Council, Town of Melbourne Beach Commissioner, the top 3 vote getters will take office there. I'm not ready to call it in this one yet. In Rockledge, Sean Ferguson with a lead over Carol Lamons. In Satellite Beach, Frank Catino beating Cheryl Deanan, a former city councilwoman, for the mayor's spot there. And in the city council race, you've got, let's see, Mark Breimer and Mindy Gibson in the lead in a 4-way race. And then there's the result for the Montecito Community Development District, which matters a lot to the people that lived on the old base housing thing, turned nice housing. And in the Viera East Community Development District, they still elect their folks to serve as stewards of their community. All right, Chris, let's talk about some of the other things that were on the ballot today that people were voting on. We don't have the results yet for some of these because the state won't be releasing any results until 8 o'clock. That's coming up pretty shortly here. But medical marijuana.
It's back.
Was back. What do you think is going to happen with that one tonight?
Well, I anticipate that it will cross the finish line and get that elusive 60% that it wasn't able to achieve 2 years ago in that midterm election. I'm expecting it to get over 60%. A lot of people don't realize that amendment in 2014 received more than 58% of the vote, the highest of any state.
Really?
On marijuana issue. That's right. California, Colorado, Washington, they all got 53, 54%. Florida, 58%, the highest of any state, which a lot of people, again, are shocked by that. But here we are now in 2016. I'm assuming that is going to get past the 60% threshold this time. That's
a hard measure to achieve to begin with. But as you said, it was polling pretty strongly coming into election weeks, I guess you call them now, with all the early voting and mail balloting.
And there didn't seem to be a lot of as organized opposition this time as there was in 2014.
Last time we had the Herodopolises and the sheriff coming by Florida Today, making their case, for example, on the local level of why they thought it was a bad idea. This time it seemed like they retooled the language to kind of address some of those concerns, and we'll see if that's enough to get it over that 60% threshold tonight.
Well, let's also remember looking at this as the national implication. I mean, Florida, being in the South is still, most of the states in the South have been resistant to this change. If Florida goes, that could mean a number of southern states move in that direction. There's 11 states with this question on the ballot tonight, Matt. Most all of them are expected to pass that. That would bring the total over 35 states that have legalized it in some form, manner, or fashion.
Well, somebody in Washington better start getting busy studying this stuff, as they have not been allowed to do that for years. Sure. And if the public seems to be talking, and states as laboratories of democracy seem to be voting.
Sure.
And of course, there's the Amendment 1 that seemed like it was going to cruise to victory, and then people discovered a little something about this solar amendment.
That's a fascinating amendment. I mean, it's there's a lot of controversy. I mean, the Supreme Court, while it approved the ballot language, it was a 4-3 vote. So it was a razor-thin margin. It was very polarizing and ideological, I believe, I think we can say safely. And the power companies have dumped more than $24 million into the campaign to approve Amendment 1. I'm sure that they're expecting some return on that investment, which would be limiting access to alternative energy.
Well, we will see how these things do. Unfortunately, the state has decided not to release any election results tonight until 8 o'clock. We're coming up right on that, but would have been nice to have known how some of these things were doing, at least in Brevard County.
Sure.
And to know how some of the races, including Congress and the state Senate and other races that span more than one county, are doing, but we should have those results. I am told we have state results, so let's see how things are doing so far. Holy cow, there's the Hillary Clinton-Donald Trump race, just as tight as was predicted.
This is interesting, Matt, because I think one of the big villains in the in this election cycle has been the polls.
You think so?
A lot of criticism of the polls.
Well, I've got one or two that I watch closely. Well, it looks like it's going to take a little bit before our numbers update here, but at least we're going to give you a primer here on what we're looking at. Oh, look, there's the medical marijuana thing, and so far, it's well above that 60% threshold. That will be fascinating here for Florida.
Sure.
We'll probably have these results on the second pass. Same with the Amy Tidd, David Mayfield race, a race we definitely want to talk about here tonight because it's very important to the Space Coast and the Lagoon. This is one that I thought might be a little closer. Sean Ashby, the Democrat, against Coach P. Placentia. But Coach P, a comfortable lead there. They're both high school teachers in the Orlando area. Tom Goodson appears to be leading Mike Blake for the Central Brevard House District. Okay, look at Christina Sanchez with 55% in the judge race there. Let's go back up to County Commission. We've mentioned this race before. Rita Pritchett, the comfortable lead in District 1. John Tobiah with about a 10 or point lead there in Southeast Brevard. Scott Ellis comfortably leading Dave Netterstrom in the Clerk of Courts race. Tina Deskovich pretty well out in front in the school board seat.
Look at that.
Look at what has happened in District 4. We've got a 50-50 tie thus far. We'll have to look closer at those vote totals as we go forward tonight. Kelly McCormick Ingram leading in that interesting judge race. Ben Malik appears destined to be the mayor of Cocoa Beach for a couple more years, at least. Cocoa Beach City Council is shaping up to be a competitive race. As you can see there, you got a 42 to 42% race. Henry Parrish seems likely to win. I didn't hear much from Dontavius Tay Smith there, his challenger in Cocoa, but he had a great website. Love it. Kathy Meehan leading again for Melbourne Mayor. Yvonne Minus slightly ahead of Dan Porsey in the City Council race there in Melbourne. There's the other Melbourne City Council race with C.J. Johnson trailing Paul Alfrey. City of Palm Bay Mayor William Capote. That's a pretty sizable lead on former Mayor John Mazziotti. And we'll take a look at the Palm Bay City Council race results there so far. There's a tight one for seat 3. And in Titusville, Walt Johnson appears to be beating Robert Jordan, the former school board chairman for mayor. City Council seat 2, Sarah Steckel is pretty comfortably ahead there. Now let's go to West Melbourne. You can see the results. Top 3 vote getters will take office in that race. And in the Barefoot Bay Recreation District, top 3 vote getters will become trustees in that race. All right, Chris, let's talk a little bit more about.
We've got some Senate.
Oh, we have some.
Right there.
Look at that. We got some congressional results coming in. Bill Posey leading Corey Westbrook 2-1. Number 2, medical marijuana. Again, it's a pretty sizable lead. You know, we're just getting these state results in for the first time, so let's take some time to look these over before we get into more analysis. Debbie Mayfield for State Senate representing Brevard and Indian River County seems to have a pretty sizable lead over Amy Tidd, but you know what? Amy is coming in with that 40% that I predicted. She is never a pushover. Sean Ashby and Coach P battling it out in North Brevard. Tom Goodson beating Mike Blake, the former mayor of Cocoa, for the Central Brevard State House seat. And now we're getting just the judicial race there. Look at this race for President of the United States in Florida. You can see the results over on the right. That's a close one.
Matt, that's Florida's role here in this presidential contest.
It's to scare everyone.
Well, it's going to decide whether this race continues on into the wee hours of the morning or if it ends early. This is a must-win state for Donald Trump. Trump has to win. Without Florida, there is no path to 270 electoral college votes. Hillary Clinton can lose Florida and still she's got a number of paths to make it. So Florida, once again, playing a key and pivotal role in electing and deciding who the next president is.
Wow. Well, I'm told we have about 76% of the vote counted thus far. We've got about 163 of the precincts in, so the next time we take a pass through the Brevard County results, we'll be seeing some things getting a little bit more concrete as we go along here. Now, you have been watching Palm Bay and a variety of referenda that are on the ballots down there.
Fascinating referendum down
We'll be
there.
showing the results there if people watch closely in the crawl or in the graphics that we have as the night progresses. What's going on in Palm Bay?
Well, I'd say the city council passed a number of proposals. They put them on the ballot and decided to let direct democracy work and see what the people have to say about some very interesting revisions to the charter of the city of Palm Bay, including tax limitations, putting an additional limitation on the ability to raise property taxes. We've got term limits that we would have imposed. We've also got setting up a primary election for city council and mayor, so that we have a primary election and then we move to a general election so that we don't have situations where candidates can receive a plurality or a small minority and be elected.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think there's some really interesting revisions to the city charter there.
Well, there was something of a little bit of a political coup that happened down there with a change of leadership in Palm Bay. And it sounds to me like they're codifying things that would create a very conservative government in Palm Bay for years and years to come.
Sure. That was when reading through those revisions, I was definitely shocked to see exactly that point, how conservative these proposals are.
Were there any newcomers to politics that you saw in any of these races that you were just really intrigued by to see how they would do?
Well, I tell you, I met Randy Foster on the campaign trail for that county commission seat, which takes in a good chunk of Palm Bay. And I was really impressed with his demeanor, his knowledge on the issues, and thought that was going to be a close and competitive race.
I think there are a few that I've seen, some young folks that are out there. I think in the school board race, we've got some interesting, fresh faces running for school board, whether it's Tina Deskovich or Darcy Addo. You're going to have some fresh opinion and blood on that school board.
Well, that Karen Henderson, Matt Susan race now is 50-50. It's going to go down to the wire, and really, I think whoever wins that seat is really going to push the school board in one direction or the other. I've
been watching and meeting some of the candidates in some of the city council races, especially in South Brevard, and it's great to see some people in their 20s out, or maybe even their 30s out running for office for the very, very first time.
Sure.
Learning some of those hard lessons. C.J. Johnson in Melbourne is one of them. Vinnie Taranto Indy Atlantic, we've seen their names pop up. Boy, they've been giving it their best. They may not win tonight, but these are people that you might see come back around again.
Well, remember John Tobiah. As a matter of fact, when I was young, in 2000, 16 years ago, Tobiah Herodopoulos, myself, were in a state legislative primary. And of course, we know the outcome there, but John Tobiah came back 8 years later, got elected to the state legislature, and he's a relatively young guy too. And so it is kind of interesting and refreshing to see a wider variety of demographic groups competing here in Brevard County.
Let's take a look at some more results. I'm told that we have 168 of 170 precincts reporting in Brevard County, and we're going to see some of those tight races get a little bit more clear here at this point. This is not one of them. Rita Pritchett appears likely to win in District 1 in North Brevard. John Tobiah has a pretty comfortable lead over Randy Foster in southeastern Brevard, and Christina Znardi was never not going to win this race against the sham-write-in candidate in southwest Brevard. Scott Ellis, the incumbent clerk of courts, powerhouse campaigner, appears comfortably ahead of Dave Netterstrom, a no party affiliation voter. And here are the school board races. Wow, we've got a difference of, I think, 400 votes between Matt Susan and Karen Henderson, and with Susan barely ahead in that race. Kelly McCormick Ingram is ahead of Rod Ingram for the county judge race, and Ben Malik appears likely to be elected mayor in Cocoa Beach. We're going to go through the Cocoa Beach City Council results now. We've got a really tight one between Mike Gautreaux and Carolyn Woolis. Pardon my pronunciation, folks. And there we go to Cocoa. Henry Parrish appears well ahead of Dontavius Tay Smith for the mayor's race there. Now down to Melbourne, where Kathy Meehan, the incumbent mayor, is beating two pretty well-known city council figures for that seat. And in District 3, in the city council race, you've got a close one there. I mentioned C.J. Johnson earlier. He is trailing Paul Alfrey, who I think is a former policeman in Melbourne. Now we go to Palm Bay, where William Capote has held on to a lead over former Mayor John Mazziotti most of the night. Henry Santiago Jr. pretty comfortably ahead there. Brian Jacob Anderson leading in the Seat 3 race. That's still a close one. And Walt Johnson in Titusville appears likely to be elected mayor. But again, we have several precincts reported, not yet to report. I can't tell you which ones those are, just from my seat here, though. City of West Melbourne has got a 3 top vote getter race. Those are the results so far. And then in Barefoot Bay, this is still a tight race, but the top 3 vote getters will become trustees in Barefoot Bay. And we'll come back in just a few minutes now that we've taken another look at the local races. I want to introduce you to our other analyst I told folks would be here tonight. This is Kendall Moore, attorney, political consultant, former Rockledge City Councilman, who has been busy politically consulting tonight. So glad you could join us for this second period of the for the show tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, Bill, what are some of the hot spots that you've been watching in this election?
You know, it's an interesting night tonight, Matt, especially with the Brevard County. You're looking at 3 brand new county commissioners. It's rare that we get the majority of the commission to turn over at one time. Certainly Christina Znardi, we knew she'd be elected tonight because of the write-in candidate. Up north, it looked like Rita Pritchett winning very handily there, and then probably the closest of the races down south with John Tobiah and Randy Foster. And so those are certainly ones that we were watching tonight. And then many of the city races in my own hometown of Rockledge. Dick Blake had been on the Rockledge City Council for 39 years, and that seat being replaced tonight in a somewhat close race between Sean Ferguson and Carol Lamant. So really good city races and great at the County Commission.
I think one of the puzzling races that I just couldn't get a handle on this year was the Mike Blake, former Cocoa mayor running against Tom Goodson, a state representative running in a new district. It was hard to get them together, to listen and hear them out, to know who might have an advantage. Mike Blake is a gregarious, popular guy. It looks like he's not going to win tonight so far based on the results that we've seen tonight. Well, how do you think that one might turn out?
You know, it was a very interesting race. I mean, Mike Blake with the history, two-term mayor in the city of Cocoa, having won every single precinct when he ran in the city of Cocoa, and now to come back, a fairly significant challenge against a fairly stable incumbent in Tom Goodson, most specifically in that district. Knew it would be a big challenge for Mike Blake tonight, but looks like Tom Goodson will be the victor.
All right, let's take a look at some of the new state results as we can catch you up, Kendall, and we'll see how things look at this point. Look at that. Those results for president look like they have flipped slightly since the last time we looked at them. The Marco Rubio-Patrick Murphy race is not as close as I thought it might be, or at least Democrats thought it would be for sure. Bill Posey seems to be handily beating Corey Westbrook, a Democratic challenger for the congressional seat representing Brevard and Indian River counties. Very important. Medical marijuana, still well ahead of the 60% threshold to pass here in Florida. Dorothy Hukill, did I say that right? Hukill?
Hukill.
This is a new district that reaches barely down into Brevard County and in North Brevard. She is a Port Orange figure. We'll see how that turns out. Debbie Mayfield comfortably ahead of Amy Tidd, the Democratic candidate for state senate, also for Brevard and Indian River counties. In North Brevard, Titusville, Mims, the state House district that extends over to Orlando, looks like Renee Placentia is leading there. There's that Mike Blake-Tom Goodson race that we talked about just a few minutes ago. Again, some of these results are coming in just brand new because the state waited until 8 o'clock to release any results. Randy Fine leading David Kearns in that South Brevard House district that John Tobias has represented for some time. Christina Sanchez ran for judge 2 years ago, didn't win. This time she's running and appears to have a comfortable lead in her race for judge. County Commission District 1, that's the northern part that Kendall Moore just mentioned. Rita Pritchett with a comfortable lead over Democrat Ron Taylor. Randy Foster, well, John Tobias, those results might need a little adjusting. There we go. John Tobias with a 54% to 46% lead over Randy Foster in southeast Brevard. Scott Ellis has been leading all night over Dave Netterstrom, an NPA candidate, one of the few people running not with party affiliation when they could. And in school board races here, we're seeing a very, very close one in the school board district that represents Vieira, Rockledge, Suntree, and North Melbourne. For judge in Group 2, County Court, Kelly McCormick Ingram has a pretty comfortable lead in that race. Ben Malik still leading, likely to win in that race for Cocoa Beach mayor. Ed Martinez seems likely to win the City Council Seat 2 race, and this one is still pretty tight with Carolyn Lewis with it looks like a 5-point lead in her race. Henry Parrish, not such a close race there over Dontavia Smith. Look at that race. There's Kathy Meehan running against Mike Nolan and Hazel Buggs for mayor in Melbourne. Lots of mayoral races open tonight. More results from Melbourne there. There's the mayor's race in Palm Bay. I think a lot of people were kind of biting their nails to see how that one would turn out just because the political intrigue was so great. We're seeing Harry Santiago winning handily in the Seat 2 race there. Brian Jacob Anderson with a 1 percentage point lead in Seat 3. Up in Titusville, Walt Johnson beating Robert Jordan for mayor by about 10 percentage points. And we'll take a look at some of the Titusville City Council results there. West Melbourne, top 3 vote getters will become council members based on tonight's election. Now we'll go down to Barefoot Bay, where we have, boy, there's a tight race still. Top 3 vote getters will become trustees. Okay, let's talk cities. Cities are fun. Cities are where a lot of our people live, and sometimes these cities make the biggest impacts on our lives. What are a couple of the council or mayoral races that you think you might see change, might see local impact, or that you were just watching curiously to see how they turned out? Let's go with Chris first.
Well, you know, I mean, Melbourne and Palm Bay, I've been focused on those races, and you know, again, the intrigue with Mazziotti and Capote, but William Capote has done a great job. He's been out there, great grassroots support, and we can see that tonight with the results. Kathy Meehan in a three-way race, pulling 50%. Whenever you can do that in a three-way race, I think that's, can we call that a mandate for leadership?
That's true.
Kendall?
And those are well-known council members that were running
They
against
are.
her. What about you, Kendall?
You know, I'd take those two as well. In Palm Bay, I think you described it. It was the intrigue, the former Mayor John Mazziotti coming back again to challenge
Political
the new
animal.
mayor. Absolutely, and it looks like Capote has pulled off that race tonight fairly handily. Melbourne, very interesting, as Chris said. You had the current mayor, a current council member, and a perennial candidate in Hazel Buggs all running against each other. 50%, as Chris said, a mandate. And then I think the other one that was hot is certainly to the north in Titusville. You had Walt Johnson, longtime council member, being challenged, or actually running for the mayoral seat, being challenged by Robert Jordan, you know, two-term school board member there. A very long race, very tough primary between the two of them. Looks like Walt Johnson will be successful this evening.
Yeah, I was watching Satellite Beach as sort of a bellwether of kind of conservative politics in here in Brevard County. There always seems to be this little battle there, at least there has been for the last 5 to 8 years, between kind of a more conservative insurgency that came and went and a more old guard kind of a Republican regime in Satellite. It was all insurgent there for a couple of years. They made some major changes. Tonight we'll have to take a look at how some of the ballot measures turned out, because the old guard returned. They got the streets paved, they got the fiscal house in order, they fixed their community redevelopment agency, and now they're making a number of charter changes to make things stay that way for some time. So we'll see how those things turn out.
Also, those Palm Bay chart, when we go back to those, I know Kendall wanted to get your insight on some of those as well. The
What
tax
was that expression
limitations
about?
Well, I think Matt knows that I've been very participative at the county, chairing the charter review 2 times, and just to see that number of charter amendments, trying to convince people relative to that. But you're talking about how much you're going to pay city council members and the mayor, talking about term limits. I mean, talking about collecting taxes and those kinds of things. Very serious issues on the ballot for them today. And to have that number of them at the same time, it'd be hard to advocate for one or even communicate about them. So I think that was one where the purity of the people would really come through, because there really wasn't time, money, or energy to advocate for that many at the same time.
I've also been watching to see how the Cocoa Beach races turn out. I know we had at least one close one, but it looks like Ben Malik is going to be, seems like a pretty level-headed guy there, good background as a banker, and there's always plenty of civic warfare going on at Cocoa Beach for him to steer.
Yeah, really smart, really sharp, and the big change over there as well. Long-time Rockledge City Council, Rockledge City Manager Jim McKnight, after 32 years in the city of Rockledge, will be starting in January in Cocoa Beach.
Is that right?
So you'll have both a change in the mayoral seat and a change at the city manager. So big changes for the city of Cocoa Beach.
Wow, so we've covered Melbourne, we've covered Palm Bay, Cocoa Beach, Satellite Beach, Rockledge, Titusville. Am I leaving anything out? Oh, Palm Bay, we got them too. All right, we're talking cities. Let's take a look at some of the most recent results. I know that there are more state results coming in, even as Brevard County appears to be finishing up its counting. Rita Pritchett, well in the lead there in North Brevard for County Commission, and then in southeastern Brevard for the seat formerly represented by Trudy Infantini, or I guess still represented. Looks like John Tobias is leading there. Christine Isnardi was never going to lose against a write-in candidate for southwest Brevard County, including Palm Bay. Scott Ellis seems to be handily beating Dave Netterstrom tonight. Tina Deskovich with a pretty ample lead against Darcy Addo for school board in the southeastern Brevard area. You saw the results there between Matt Susan and Karen Henderson for school board. Now we had a judge race there. There's the Ben Malik over Adrian Dillon race in Cocoa Beach, and now we're going to get some Cocoa Beach City Council results. Ed Martinez is winning in that race, but again, we have this really close one for seat 3. Cocoa Beach Mayor Henry Parrish with a sizable lead over Tay Smith in Cocoa. There's the Melbourne mayoral race we talked about just a moment ago with Kathy Meehan winning in a three-way race. Yvonne Minus leading Dan Porsey for District 3 in the City Council. Paul Alfrey leading in District 5 over C.J. Johnson. City of Palm Bay Mayor, this was another fun one to watch. William Capote, incumbent, beats so far John Mazziotti, former longtime mayor. And on the City Council, we're seeing Henry Santiago winning in seat 2 and Brian Jacob Anderson in seat 3 so far. Let's go to Titusville, where Walt Johnson, as we mentioned a moment ago, is leading Robert Jordan for the mayor's race there. City of Titusville, seat 2, Sarah Steckel is Stockel. I've been saying it wrong all night. Stockel. Stockel. We'll get it right one of these rounds. All right, and I told you we'd report the Barefoot Bay Recreation District results, and you had them there, and there's the City of Cape Canaveral City Council race. This one's really interesting to me, and they had two very long-time people in Rocky Randall and Buzz Pestos coming back against two incumbents, and it looks like one of them might sneak in tonight. We'll see how that turns out. Malabar Town Council, Laura Mahoney seems to be leading in District 2, and Steve Rivette in District 3. Town of Melbourne Beach. Commissioner, top 3 vote getters there will win tonight. Wyatt Hoover, Tom Davis, and Margot Dorfman are leading so far. And in Rockledge, Sean Ferguson has a pretty comfortable lead for City Council. And there's the Satellite Beach Mayor's race with Frank Catino leading Cheryl Deenan. And of course, in the City Council, they've got the top 2 vote getters who win there. And in the Montecito Community Development District, which is the housing that used to be the former South Patrick housing, and the Vieira East communities, they are still voting to elect their stewards, and we wish them the very best. Let's take a look at the presidential races. This one has flipped again, depending on which Florida precincts have reported, with Hillary Clinton taking, well, no, I'm sorry, Donald Trump is up by a percentage point over Hillary Clinton. Marco Rubio is leading over Patrick Murphy by a pretty comfortable lead. A little bit. Bill Posey seems destined for re-election in the congressional seat that includes Brevard and Indian River counties. There's the medical marijuana result. It needed 60% to pass. It's got 71% so far. Seems like it's in pretty good shape to pass. Now, there's the far northern Brevard Senate District. It just kind of sneaks into Titusville and I think Mims, that area. But most of Brevard and Indian River County is represented by District 17, where Debbie Mayfield seems to have a pretty comfortable lead as a Republican over Amy Tidd. Also in that far northern corner of Brevard County, it looks like Renee Placentia is beating Sean Ashby, 2 high school teachers, by the way, from Orlando. And in South Brevard, Randy Fine appears likely to beat David Kearns in District 53. That's the South Brevard House District that includes southern West Melbourne, Melbourne, Palm Bay, and Melbourne Beach. Okay.
That District 53, I thought would be a little more competitive because of, I think that's probably the most competitive district in Brevard County for state house races, and for Randy Fine to be out in front, 57%. That's definitely surprising, but he did run a great campaign, a lot of media, a lot of grassroots. Republicans sweeping Brevard County tonight, Kendall?
I mean, certainly that's the case, and I think one of the things that we'll see on the county commission level even is a more conservative county commission. You have the moving on of Robin Fisher being replaced by Republican, Rita Pritchett, and then even to the south with John Tabaya coming to the coming to the commission. I certainly believe that you see a conservative push there. You referenced the seats down south, both county commission seats and that House seat, ones where the Democratic Republican margins aren't like they are around the rest of the county. Sure. Democrats are actually pretty close, so to see Randy Fine do that well, as you suggested, is a big mandate down there for him.
As Democrats, they lost their one elected official here in Brevard County, being replaced on District 1 County Commission. But I think another thing is the no party affiliation and third party candidates also will be disappointed tonight. Dave Netterstrom, who was self-financed and had a lot of money, but as we saw here, Scott Ellis, not even close.
Do you think that was, this was an interesting race to me in that it was a referendum on the style of leadership that people wanted to see in a clerk of courts race. Scott Ellis, well known as a fiscal watchdog, auditing county commissioners, community redevelopment districts, fought Blue Ware, fought the Economic Development Commission, sued them to try to get public records. Dave Netterstrom ran more as a good steward of the courts, a business background, a nonpartisan candidate, and yet he doesn't seem to be winning in this election tonight. Is this a referendum on a style of leadership, or is this just raw skill by Scott Ellis in campaigning here in Brevard County?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, if you look at Scott historically, he's just been a difficult candidate to beat. He does not raise a significant amount of money, does not run a traditional style election. And one of the things I think he's been able to do, Chris and Matt, it's this weird thing that he's the protector of the people. And it's cut across partisanship that people believe he's an extra set of eyes and ears out there. No one else has been able to do it, but he has. He left, he came back, you know, the first time back after Mitch Needleman, this time again, the numbers that he posts prove that people do believe that he's a protector of the people.
Interesting.
I think Kendall's right on that. You know, Scott Ellis, he's got a folksy kind of style. You know, he doesn't come across as being, you know, too uppity, if you will. He's kind of relates to the people well. He's a great vote getter, and he's a fiscal hawk. The other thing is that we don't vote for third-party candidates that often. You know, really, Republicans and Democrats, it's a two-party system by and large, and it's very difficult for third parties to break in. And I think we'll see that with Gary Johnson at the national level trying to get that 5% just to get matching funds. I don't think that's going to happen tonight either.
Wow, interesting. Well, I'm told that we have 76% voter turnout here in Brevard County. Does that seem higher or lower than you were expecting?
Well, I mean, let's remember 76% of registered voters. There are other calculations based on voting age population. This is a figure of registered voters. We had about 78% in 2012. So we are really right on track to where we should be. Early voting hasn't increased overall turnout, but boy, 60% voted early. People are the voters who are already voting are taking advantage of early and absentee balloting.
I love it. I think it's convenient. It seems to be popular. People talk about it. It does make campaigning much different. You have not election day that you've got a campaign toward. You have election weeks that you need to time a direct mail and everything else that you would do in an election.
And look what happens when you know, an FBI director drops a bombshell 10 days before the election and you've already voted.
That's right.
You know, not all the states allow for early voters to change their ballots after it's been cast. So that's a new dynamic that we're going to have to deal with in future elections.
I saw a statistic from the primary, and I think it, as Matt said, changes the dynamic. I think they said 60% of all the votes were cast absentee or early, and 40% of the votes in the box more than 14 days prior to the election. So you're raising money, your ability to communicate moves so much farther back that you're 6 weeks prior now in order to do that. I've been a victim of that myself. I was in an election that I won every precinct on election day, but lost the absentees by a ratio of 2 to 1.
Oh.
And you could be behind mathematically so much that statistically you'd have to get 70 or 80% of the vote on election day to catch up, and that's a tall order. So I agree with Chris, it has changed the dynamic.
Wow. Well, we've got, I'm told, some new state results, so we'll take a look and see how things are turning in. And in the meantime, I'm going to see if I can put our crack research staff to work getting me a result on the lagoon tax that I might be able to sneak in for folks. Well, it looks, well, let's see, that's, well, we'll take a look at the state results here in a second. We'll come back to that in just a sec. Kendall, I asked Chris Muro this in a previous segment, but how did you think that redistricting affected things this time around?
Well, you know, I tell you one very interesting thing with all the Senate redistricting, that it really sucked so much money out of the process because you had all of the senators running at the same time. So that was a very interesting dynamic statewide. Here in Brevard, just even on the local level, the redistricting was different. If you recollect, just a few years ago, as the population shift and as we had to make the district larger in District 1 to the north, District 2 kind of in the northern central part of the county, moving farther and farther south, it did change the dynamics, and as Chris referenced earlier, changed District 3 and District 5 of the County Commission to be far more Democratic, just like District 53 of the State House. So I think those changes, they may not have manifested themselves in the results today, but those will be challenges for Republicans, I believe, in the future, where you only have a 2,000 vote differential between R's and D's.
Okay. Well, I know that we were recalculating some state results there. Let's go back and take a look and see how things are going. Wow, look at that Donald Trump-Hillary Clinton race. These are statewide results so far. Marco Rubio is comfortably leading Patrick Murphy in a race that I think some state Democrats were hoping would be much closer. Same with Corey Westbrook, running a tough race against an incumbent Republican, Bill Posey, who appears to be getting a 2-to-1 lead so far. Medical marijuana seems likely to pass tonight here in Florida, given its lead thus far. There's the result for far northern Brevard County. The Senate race drops down into there. This is the race that represents most of Brevard County and Indian River, and that's Debbie Mayfield leading Amy Tidd. Renee Placencia leading Sean Ashby, again in far northern Brevard. I guess that's Titusville and Mims. Tom Goodson, an incumbent running in a new district, beating Mike Blake, who was a former Cocoa mayor. Randy Fine, you mentioned him, Kendall, in South Brevard, running a really skilled campaign, winning in Southeast House District in Brevard. Christina Sanchez winning in the Circuit Judge 18th Judicial District thus far. Rita Pritchett, we're updating the numbers there, but she has comfortably led tonight over Democrat Ron Taylor for County Commission District 1. All right, we'll come back to these in just a minute. Oh, there's the Randy Foster, John Tabaya results in South Brevard. I think we saw John Tabaya leading pretty comfortably there. Kendall, let's talk about the school board. We'll talk with Chris as well, but things have been changing on the Brevard County School Board, and depending on who wins tonight, we might see a little bit of a different outlook than we've had in the past. What do you make of it?
Very close race on the Matt Susan, Karen Henderson race. As campaigns are concerned, I think Matt Susan ran a very good campaign. Lots of ground game, very solid money raised. It would be needed to challenge an incumbent like Karen Henderson. You know, one of the things I think that our polling found that would be beneficial for Henderson is that when you look at what people think about the school board, regardless of EDR, regardless of, you know, whatever may have come down the pipe, people still have a fairly generally positive view of the school board. So challenging an incumbent was certainly a tough go for Matt Susan. Looks like that race is extremely close tonight. In the other race, Darcy Addo and Tina Deskovich both campaigned extremely hard. Darcy ran somewhat of a grassroots campaign. You probably saw many times in your own publication discussions about her son and some issues that arose there with a sitting school board member. But looks like tonight that race was not close, and Tina Deskovich will be replacing Amy Nisi in that race.
Interesting. Well, she certainly brings a somewhat similar outlook, it seems like, in terms of a little bit more conservative. Chris, you sized up that race a little bit earlier.
Right, yeah. I think the school board potentially could be moving much more to the right than we've seen over the past decade or two. Although, looking at the campaign, it's liberals and conservatives, they've both been harping on opposing Common Core and ending high-stakes testing. That seems to be, I don't know what your polling has been telling you, Kendall, but that seems to be winning issues.
Those are key issues, Chris, and I'll tell you this, better than polling, I listened to my 14-year-old son and 12-year-old daughter. They hate for me to call their names, but we were headed to soccer practice the other day, and Ty and Kaylin saw the array of signs outside of early voting, and you know what they saw? They saw the little signs that said, Common Core and high stakes testing. And they were like, I don't know who that candidate is, but I think you should vote for them.
Right.
And so even our children are driving the idea and thought process on those two issues. And they really raised pretty high this year as far as our school board races were concerned.
And I think that spills over into once the election, the dust is settled and the new members are seated, what direction will they take on that? And I think it's going to be very difficult. Their testing has been successful. There's got to be some way to assess, have some kind of standardized assessment for academic achievement. There's no doubt it needs to be reformed, but I highly doubt that we're going to be getting rid of standardized testing anytime soon.
Right, and the other thing about the school board, Matt, was you are adding at least one individual tonight, maybe two, but with the addition of Tina Deskovich, you're adding it to two members recently elected in Misty Belford and John Craig. And so you will now have at least three, and maybe four members who've just been elected in the last year or two, and a brand new superintendent in Dr. Desmond Blackburn. So lots of fresh faces in that environment.
Seems to be that the focus among, a strong focus among the sort of the new majority on the school board is fiscal oversight. Seems to be much stronger than in the past, where it was more of a focus on excellence, leading the state in quality of education, that kind of a thing. I'm not saying that's missing, but you just hear a change in tone in the kinds of conversations that we've seen in elections. All right, let's go to take a look at some more local election results as they're coming in here. There is the presidential race. That is the statewide result, and that's awfully close. Not so close is the Marco Rubio-Patrick Murphy race. Nor is the Bill Posey-Corey Westbrook race, although I think in both cases we saw Democrats fielding a couple of strong candidates and running hard. Medical marijuana appears likely to pass tonight, given its lead. There's the Senate race. I should also mention Amendment 1, the solar race. That doesn't appear to be doing very well right now. It's got 50%, maybe 49%. I'm not sure that's going to go anywhere. We're taking a look now at some of the legislative races here in Brevard County. One of these, that one, extends into Orange County, where both of those gentlemen are teachers. Tom Goodson, a state representative, appears to be beating former Cocoa Mayor Mike Blake for Florida House District 51. In the circuit judge race, Group 9, Christina Sanchez has 55% over Steve Henderson with 45%. All right, and I will find, if we can, tonight. Okay, there we go. County Commission District 1, Rita Pritchett, North Brevard, replacing Robin Fisher, it appears, tonight. And we've got some judge retention results here. Kendall, you're an attorney. You've been involved with the legal profession for some time. Have you ever seen a result that didn't look like this in a retention race?
No, that's Chris was chuckling to himself. That's pretty par for the course relative to that. But I think the one that you just mentioned, I think it is interesting to note Christina Sanchez, Hispanic female, elected to be a local judge here in Brevard County. Another, I think, historic moment as far as race is concerned here, especially relative to the judiciary.
Well, I will say this much for the judges who are getting retained on the Supreme Court tonight. It wasn't long ago that the Tea Party was in full force. There was some very conservative pressures in Tallahassee to break up the court, change the court, do something to weaken some of its decisions that limited legislative power, and it doesn't appear that that is much of a factor anymore.
Well, that amendment, I believe that was Amendment 5 in 2012. I mean, once you got to the second line of that, people were fed up with it, and they said voted no.
That's right.
So
yeah, so let's pay attention to our local races here, where we really know the people and know what's going to happen if they win. Look at that close race in Melbourne Beach. Top 3 vote getters there will take seats. There's your Rockledge City Council, Kendall. Satellite Beach, Frank Catino, current mayor. Looks like he's going to beat Cheryl Deanan tonight. There's the city council race in Satellite Beach, where it looks like Mindy Gibson and Mark Breimer are going to take the 2 seats that are available. And then Montecito Community Development District. And next we'll see the Vieira District. They are electing their stewards and representatives tonight. Boy, 49% to 48% for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. You know what, Kendall? We talked with Chris a little bit earlier about, do you see the results or anything that's been going on in that presidential race actually affecting things down here in Brevard County and some of the other races on the ticket, and some of the ways that people were fearing, predicting, cheering?
Yeah, I think it when we review the results, I think it certainly has a chance, and I'll give you a couple examples. One, whether you agreed with Hillary Clinton's mantra about Trump or not, I think you could see a chance that women have been energized to vote in this election. Number two, we have seen somewhat of a slip in the African American turnout. I don't think anyone expected to see what you saw in the 2008-2012 historic race with Barack Obama, but in that slip, we saw a rise in the Hispanic turnout. And I think that directly relates to those issues, particularly in Brevard. That's a South Brevard issue. And so I think we could see the Hispanic-related issues showing themselves when we look at the results down in District 3, District 5, and District 53. And then as it relates to some of the female candidates, most particularly in the school board, I think that may be something that could have helped Karen Henderson in that regard. So I think clearly those trends that we will see in the national could affect our local races, particularly when they're close. When they're within a point or two, like we see in that school board race between Karen Henderson and Matt Susan, when we do the breakdown of who voted, I think you will see some of the similar trends that you see reflected nationally.
Okay, well, we're going to go to more election results here in just a second. We have, I believe, almost all of the Brevard County race precincts reporting, but there's still plenty of results to be reported yet in Florida. Donald Trump is leading Hillary Clinton by a percentage point at this stage of the race. Marco Rubio seems to be well ahead of Patrick Murphy for U.S. Senate. Bill Posey, congressman, ahead of Democratic challenger Corey Westbrook. Amendment 2, medical marijuana, statewide results. This is recalculating, but the last time we checked, it was still, I think, at about 70%. Right. Amendment 1, the solar thing, it doesn't appear to, that's going to do well tonight at only 50%. Still.
Well, unlikely it'll make it over that 60% threshold if that's at this point. That's
right.
Stunning.
It would be tough to get over that 50. And Matt, I think what happened, it got to be a very confusing issue when you saw such heavy media relative to were the utility companies involved and what did it really mean, and was the plain language that was put out on the ballot really what it was intended to accomplish. And I think some people may have voted no just out of concern or confusion, and that's what happens in the ballot. I think that's what may have happened to medical marijuana on the first go around, and they were much clearer in their message this time, and we see it reflected in their 70%.
Well, one of the things I'm going to be interested in seeing is if anybody's confused about some of these city initiatives and charter referendums and things like that, they're in every ballot. Right. Palm Bay, Satellite Beach,
Indian Harbor
Beach has one regarding the height of weeds and things like that. Boy, you can put just about anything on the ballot, and hopefully it doesn't slow things down. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left in this program. Let's talk about where you think things are going. We talked about there being a conservative county commission. Indian River Lagoon needs pretty big solutions, it seems like. How do you square those two things? Chris?
Well, I mean, I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges, because we know how important the Indian River Lagoon is to the livelihood of Brevard County and our tourism base and the quality of life that we enjoy here. I've been here for 38 years, and I've always been a big fan of the Indian River Lagoon. I think you're going to hear county commissioners, conservative commissioners, moving towards maybe a more market-based type solutions to bring a way to clean up the Indian River Lagoon and help us not get into that situation. What the specifics are on that, though, I think it's going to be hard fought. I think there's going to be, depending on the outcome of this referendum tonight on the half-cent tax, if that passes, I think that's a game changer. I think the county commission then is going to be limited in what it can do if that money comes in and if that referendum is passed.
Kendall?
I agree with Chris. You won't be able to turn the money down, but the more conservative commission will decide the how. And I think Chris pointed it out, the market-driven solutions and just viewing it from a different perspective. You will have to take the money and go about doing it, but they may just go about it in a very different way based upon that new construct. I think the other issue that you referenced, Chris mentioned it earlier, with the one single Democratic county commissioner who's been around for quite some time. I saw a magazine cover this week with a Superman on his chest. But you have 3 new commissioners coming, very conservative thought processes and ideals. And between that and County Manager Stockton Witten, I think you may see some slightly new directions.
I think with John Tobias and Christine Isnardi in the south part of Brevard, they almost seem libertarian,
Right.
and their outlooks and not just their politics and spending, but social issues as well. I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see how they get along with other people on the commission.
And Rita Pritchett, a CPA in the north. And so we're talking about, I joke with them sometimes that they believe in 3 colors, black, white, and green, black print, white paper, green dollars. And, how you feel about it means a lot less. And so I think structurally, she would be online with a very fiscally focused and driven thought process towards where they go.
Does this mean the end of the Titusville redevelopment of Sandpoint Park?
I think the baseball stadium is not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
I don't think that's
I think
going to
that's a
happen.
safe bet.
I'll leave that for you.
That was one of my favorite questions in the forums this year. It didn't seem to have the love that I thought it might at some point or another. All right, well, let's take another look, final look perhaps, through the results that we've been collecting for our Brevard County viewers tonight. Interesting fact, I'm told that in Brevard County, just the Brevard results, Donald Trump got 57%, Hillary Clinton got 37% here locally. So that's not close in Brevard County, and that says a little bit something about
he outperformed Mitt Romney
our politics
from 4 years ago.
here. Like I said, may not be everybody's version of what they wanted to see, but it's pretty exciting democracy. Let's take a look at some of the results here. I think we're looking at Dave Netterstrom and the clerk of courts race. Now we're moving on to the school board, where Tina Deskovich is pretty handily ahead of Darcy Addo in District 3, which is south of the Pontiac Causeway on the east side. Matt Susan is, boy, that is a close race. Kelly McCormick Ingram leading Rod Kernan for county court judge. Ben Malik looks like he's going to be the next, or going to continue to be, mayor of Cocoa Beach. Is he mayor or city councilman? I can't remember.
I think you had an appointment for the mayor when Netterstrom left, so he will be the new mayor.
Got to get my cities right. All right, we're taking a look at Cocoa Beach Council results here, and there you are in the city of Cocoa. Henry Parrish with a pretty sizable lead over Tay Smith. Kathy Meehan as mayor of Melbourne, winning, looks like, in a 3-way race. Yvonne Minus ahead of Dan Porsey for City Council in District 3. Paul Alfrey beating C.J. Johnson so far in Melbourne. In Palm Bay now, we're going down to that mayor's race, which we thought was so interesting. But William Capote with a pretty handy, looks like he's going to beat John Mazziotti for mayor. We'll take a look at the City Council results here as they come in. Titusville Mayor Walt Johnson looks like he's going to beat Robert Jordan for mayor. Take a look at the Titusville City Council race results here. And we'll go to West Melbourne, where the top 3 vote getters will take office. Barefoot Bay, again, top 3 vote getters there, and that one's been a close one all night. Cape Canaveral, it's like former Mayor Rocky Randalls is going to wind up back on the city council again after a short retirement, I guess. Down in Malabar, Laura Mahoney with a lead. Steve Rivet with a lead. And in Melbourne Beach, again here, we've got the top 3 vote getters will be seated. And in Rockledge, it looks like Sean Ferguson. You mentioned Kendall, that's almost a historic seat that he's going to be.
Correct.
And in Satellite Beach, Frank Catino looks like he's headed for re-election. Mark Breimer and Mindy Gibson have led the last several updates. It looks like they're going to be elected to the City Council. Montecito Community Development District, Kathy Baglin is winning there, and Joe Walsh for the Viera East Community Development District. I told everybody that we were going to go down deep into these races, and I meant it. All right, looks like Donald Trump is still a little bit ahead in these statewide races over Hillary Clinton. Gary Johnson, Jill Stein not getting that 5% that you might hope that they could get to be contenders in the next time around. And again, we're taking a look at the congressional race there and how those go. Okay, gentlemen, let's take a look at Democrats here. Looks like they pretty much lost in most of the countywide, legislative, congressional type seats. Donald Trump with a big win in Brevard County. We'll see how things turn out statewide tonight. What do you see Democrats need to do to be more competitive in a place like Brevard County? Chris?
Well, I think what they need to do is recruit more candidates like, well, Randy Foster. Fiscally conservative, articulate, knowledgeable, willing to do the grassroots work needed to win these kind of local races. They got to move away from perennial candidates that continue to run election cycle after election cycle. They've got to recruit some new blood, younger people perhaps to get in and to energize the party. I think like Kendall had said earlier, some of the new districts are going to be a lot more competitive in future elections. Democratic Party, to be competitive, has to get ready to meet those challenges.
Kendall, what do you think? We've just got about 2 minutes left in the program. You certainly know a little bit of something about running as a Democrat here in Brevard County. What do you think?
I do, and I think Chris hit it. We certainly need to build a strong farm team that could be built through some city council races and some others to get some strong contenders with some experience. And the second one is it's the doors and the dollars. Chris talked about it. You can't only run a grassroots campaigns. Campaigns have become a very expensive sport, and it's going to necessitate the Democrats to raise dollars. I mean, if you look at some of my prior races, you look at the race that Robin Fisher won. He was very competitive, if not outraising his Republican opponent. And I think those are the necessary critical things that must be done just to be competitive.
I saw candidate after candidate on the Democratic side when we were doing our score sheets that were very strong on the Indian River Lagoon, on environmental issues. Not a surprise, given that so many came out of environmental activism, and that was basically their network. But I saw on our score sheets, kind of like Chris said, they could do better if they had candidates that also had stronger answers on things like business, economics, security, safety, crime, roads. Those kinds of things really matter here on the local level here in Brevard County. We'll see whether some people got into city council races and are coming up. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your comments here tonight. And that brings us to the close of our TV coverage. You can keep watching results and some analysis on FloridaToday.com, where I'll be at 10 o'clock with my colleague, John McCarthy. I'm Matt Reed from Florida Today. My thanks to attorney Kendall Moore and political scientist Chris Muro for joining us here in the WEFS studio. My thanks also to the awesome production crew here at Eastern Florida State College for doing so much to make this good and keep you informed. Thanks for watching. Thanks for voting.